Thank you for joining us on The Author's Stage, an initiative highlighting writers and authors who call the Saratoga Springs, New York, and surrounding areas their home. The Author's Stage is a community collaboration between Universal Preservation Hall, a member of Proctors Collaborative, and the Saratoga Springs Public Library. And we are delighted to be broadcasting from the beautiful Great Hall here at Universal Preservation Hall in downtown Saratoga Springs. Many thanks to all those involved who bring this project to life. I'm Trevor Oakley from the Saratoga Springs Public Library, and today I'm excited to be talking to author, activist, licensed clinical social worker, medium, intuitive consultant, and champion for social justice, author of Murder in the Gilded City. And so welcome, Angela Kaufman, and thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Well, getting right into it, Murder in the Gilded City. Tell us, where did the inspiration for this work come from?
Well, it came on two levels. On a personal level, I live in a community with other low-income people, and we are fighting to try to save our community from a developer. And so that has given me exposure to what it's like being in an area where developers and wealthy people are treated one way and everybody else is treated another way. And the broader inspiration just kind of came from seeing all the dynamics coming to the surface in the last couple of years, and the social tension, and like Victor Hugo said, that the paradise for the rich is made from hell for the poor. And that really feels to me what living in this area is sometimes like. And so that cross-section is a big part of that, the inspiration for this story.
And at the same time, in the settings that are taking place in this book, obviously, if you are familiar at all with the town, you recognize things because you'll name drop streets or areas of town. But there is a love and a care that's gone into these settings at the same time. So while it is, I feel anyway, while it is this kind of there is a struggle happening, there's also great care and love for the area and for the people there. So how did you, how were you able to find that balance? And was that purposeful, or did it just kind of say, wow, these things kind of really came together beautifully?
That's a good question. I think because I do have very mixed feelings. I mean, I love a lot of things about the area, but there's also these sort of darker realities that people, don't necessarily see when they just come in for tourist season. So I think that came from sort of the relationship to people, and there's an undercurrent of people sort of getting fed up with the status quo, but they're bringing really beautiful, and in fact, there's a scene in the book where one of the characters, who's a private investigator, and he's struggling with his own guilt and his own demons of being born into a wealthy family, and he sees the social unrest going on, and it inspires him because he starts to think, why didn't my generation get it right, so to speak, but maybe this next generation is going to be the ones to get it right. So there is this sense of like, we can do better, and people are trying to make it better, and I feel like that's where a lot of that love comes from. Yeah, absolutely. We can do better, and that's the people, while struggling, are striving. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you mentioned the private detective, Levi. Mm-hmm. Okay. So if Levi, or if not, if somebody else in the book, are there any characters in this book that you're particularly proud of, how you created them and developed them? It's interesting. One of the fun things for me about writing is I have an idea of who the characters are, but then over the course of time, they show me who they are, and it's not always who I thought they were going to be. Levi is one of those characters who is very fun to write. My father jokes that he's based on my brother, and he's not. They both have huge record collections, and they both love music, and that's where the resemblance ends. But Levi was an interesting character to write. So he's born into a wealthy family, and he discovers that his family's wealth was gained due to some unscrupulous moves, and so he carries the guilt from that, and he dedicates his life to trying to bring justice by helping people for free, but he also imprisons himself. He stays in his family's home, and he, has this ongoing rivalry with the, spirit of his dead parents, and in his mind, still, berating him. So he's interesting. I also had fun writing another character, Jesse, who also, everybody's on a search for justice, but they find it in different ways. Mm-hmm. And Jesse kind of goes down this rabbit hole, thinking that he's doing the right thing, and he gets caught up in a militia movement. So it's again, it's a likable, relatable person who just gets sort of entangled in this thing that turns out to be not exactly what he thought it was.
Yeah. Now that I did want to ask, because I definitely felt that it was scary, and it felt very real. It was scary how just kind of quickly, easily, it was for Jesse to become kind of radicalized. And it was as simple as, they want to talk to me. Mm-hmm. Somebody wanted to talk to me because I wanted to help. And so it's that altruistic kind of thing, and whatever it was in his background that sort of made him a little susceptible mm-hmm. to this. But I said, wow, that's very real, and it doesn't take massive, movement, and doesn't take tons of time. It's just like, they like me, they want to talk to me. And I went, oh my goodness, it's that easy.
It is, and that's something that I've had some experience close to home with. Someone who had been very important in my life for a long time was radicalized over the course of a summer, and it took everybody by surprise, including me. And that's, I think, part of my own, speaking of how you wrestle with your demons through your writing, it's been a theme in a couple of books since, because it just was so shocking, because it did happen subtle, but then suddenly very dramatic. And, everybody who saw this happen was blown away, totally surprised. And to this day, I still have such a hard time wrapping my head around, like, how does it happen? But it happens quickly, and it has nothing to do with so I've started studying this a lot. It has nothing to do with intelligence. It has nothing to do with any of those factors that we use to try to write somebody off because they, quote, fall for it or whatever. It could be anyone. Yeah. And it really, and that's exactly what is happening, is it's people that you would not expect, that just this perfect storm of circumstances, and wow, the change is just night and day.
Yeah. So can you share with us anything that you edited out of Murder in the Gilded City? Either something or things that you're happy about leaving out, or content that you wish you could have kept in the final manuscript, and ultimately how were those decisions made, or that decision, if it's only, one thing you're saying, oh, this is the...
Sure. The big thing is probably, so I rewrote Levi's character after getting some advice from a friend and mentor, and it was good advice. So, writing is a solitary sport, but we shouldn't do it alone. Originally, Levi was going to be the heir of ancestors who were Nazi profiteers, and the feedback I got was like, you don't have to go for the big obvious villain. There's enough that's kind of in the shadows. And it was true. And in a way, I feel like it would have been kind of lazy writing on my part to make it such an obvious thing. It was, when I scaled back from that and said, okay, there's going to be some other kind of corrupt, violent thing in his past. And as his character kind of revealed himself to me, it was actually a lot more interesting, and in some ways a lot more realistic, that it wasn't just the obvious bad guy.
Got you. Now, was this advice that you received? Do you have a group that you work with, or pre-readers, beta readers, whatever we call them, or how?
Yeah, this was from a critique group that I meet with twice a month, and we read small sections and give each other feedback, and it's so helpful.
Oh, wonderful! I like that. It's not a solitary sport. I'm sorry. What did you say? Say that again.
It's kind of a solitary sport.
That's what it was. It is a solitary sport, even though it shouldn't be. So how do you strike a balance between making demands on readers versus taking care of them or guiding them through the reading experience? I guess kind of like how hard do you want your readers to work? How much work do you want them to put in?
Well, my topics are hard enough for them. Like, I'm going to traumatize you, so at the same time, I'm not going to make things super graphic. So I think for me, where I challenge readers to read between the lines a little bit, if I'm going to have a scene where something violent happens, I'm not going to spell out the violence. You're going to get it, and if you don't get it right away, you'll get it in within the next chapter. You know, I like to do things like having a newspaper article that sort of recaptures whatever was inferred in the initial chapter, in case someone didn't quite get it, because I'm going to make readers look at things that are uncomfortable enough. Mm-hmm. I don't like to make it unnecessarily graphic just to spell it out for them.
No, that definitely felt the balance, because there were a couple of tough scenes, and as someone that also too is, I'm an animal guy, and so some things happen, and there's some subjects that are brought up that I kind of go, but you didn't traumatize me with graphic descriptions and said, no, this is the reality, this is what happens, and okay, and you feel about this, how you feel about this. Can you share with us any details about something that you're working on right now, even if it's another creative pursuit that isn't literary?
Oh, sure. So I've been a little bit slower in my work this year compared to other years, but I'm working on a collection of short horror stories, and also another novel that is a retelling of the story of St. Francis set in modern-day New Jersey, but with anarchists, and it's called Frank from Jersey, and it's just so much fun to write.
So this St. Francis, will we have an anarchist that talks to animals?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. I'm on board with that. And may I ask, as someone who's been a lifelong horror fan, are you swimming around in one aspect of horror, or are you playing with different tropes of horror? Like, what are?
So I kind of am going for some of it's magical realism. I really like Stephen King. He does some problematic things that I can feel lenient about, because I feel like he does enough to try to be inclusive at a time when other authors weren't doing that. I give him credit for that. And so this kind of goes more into where he or John Darnielle or authors like that kind of bring the social criticism and kind of blend it with horror. And so there's going to be, again, the themes about developers and housing and how animals are treated, and it kind of goes over, and there's a fun story that has to do with a militia and an Air Supply concert, so I'll just leave it at that.
All right. Wow, okay, I can't wait. I'm hooked.
Because what better place to have a militia than at an Air Supply concert?
Yeah, again, because you could have said something like, it could be at a Yanni concert. Well, again, it's like, no, that's the big obvious. Let's do something. All right, well, it's very, very cool. So I know that there are working and aspiring writers in the audience right now. So can you talk to us about your writing process, be it a specific routine that you have, maybe a time of day that you like to write, or how you warm up and flex the literary muscles, or if you prefer, just any advice that you can share with writers in the audience?
Sure. I've tried a little bit of everything over the years. I've tried the, one set time or X number of words per day. I do believe that in perfect circumstances, that kind of routine is the best thing. However, if, when stuff happens and you can't do that, I would not want someone to feel like they have to give up or wait for the perfect time. So what I would say is, my first novel, I had an idea, I wrote a page, and then I panicked, where's the other 55,000 words going to come from? And I had no idea. And my friend and mentor, suggested just write one scene at a time, you can put them together later. And so that would be the advice I would give. Even if you have an idea for the ending or the middle, or you have an idea that, this is how the character is going to have a conversation and you don't know what the rest of the story is going to be, it's better to do something and figure the rest out later than to wait for the perfect circumstances.
So that just doing something, so is that something that is just kind of outside of an outline, or is your outline something that's either on paper or that exists in your head, and then eventually these things kind of come together?
So I've done it both ways. I've as I'm kind of getting back into the swing of things with writing recently, I've had ideas come up, and I'll just open a Word document, write down Levittown, but people can't leave, and it's not because it's such a great place to live. I'll write these little sentences down, okay, I'm going to come back to this later, but I'll start the page here. Or the bare concept just to have it. I have gotten more into using outlines, and I really like using an outline, but if someone's just starting off and they're overwhelmed by the thought of well, how will I piece it all together? Don't worry about that.
Nice, nice.
Just start somewhere. It's better to do something than nothing.
Cool. All right. So I'm a librarian, so forgive me for indulging here, okay? So do you have a favorite or any memories about a particular library, a librarian, or a teacher? I love hearing the stories of, and sometimes the horror stories of the librarian, which sadly they are out there. I've done everything in my power to try to be the anti-horror librarian. But yeah, any kinds of memories along those lines that you care to share with us?
Sure. I grew up in Albany, and around the corner from School 19, which at the time had a library attached. I actually brought, this is my library card that I still use in Albany. That's from 1987 or so.
That's cool. That's
that was
awesome.
my first, and it's that's the one I use in Albany because I spent so much time at the library. Every summer I'd go and just constantly get books. It really is a place. It's my happy place. During COVID, people were like, I can't wait to go to restaurants. I can't wait to go to movies. I'm like, when's the library going to be open?
Do you know how many days I asked myself that? My goodness.
I'm sure.
I couldn't wait for y'all to come back.
Right.
So yeah, I understand. Thank you. Do you ever Google yourself or check mentions on social media or read online reviews? Do you have any favorite or memorable for any reason results, posts, anything that you could share with us?
Sure. My favorite review was actually not for this, but for a different novel called Golden Apple. Somebody wrote, it was the best compliment ever. They said it was a good story, but they couldn't sleep that night. So
Yes.
I was like, mission accomplished. That's great. I feel bad, but I also feel good.
Yeah, no, don't feel bad. They'll sleep another night.
Right.
Hopefully there's plenty of nights for sleeping.
Right.
Just until they missed one, and good job. If you could describe yourself or define yourself in just one word, what would that word be?
I'd say tenacious, and that's where, when I get an idea, I'm not going to let it go, and so that's going to help me finish the stories I'm working on. It's also going to help with the activism and the other work that I do. It kind of goes into both areas of life.
All right. Is it safe to say, again, with that, I don't want to be the one that gives anything away, but I'm thinking about Levi's character in that, and he, to me, seemed very tenacious. He's got irons in the fire and things that he's working on. Do you think any of that tenacity from you kind of bled into him?
Definitely. There was a lot of there's a lot of similarities, both in and even just through Levi. I think I was trying to work on some of my own guilt. Not I'm not from an affluent family, but just guilt knowing about the role of white supremacy and white privilege, and how do I make peace with things that my ancestors and that I might have benefited from that have harmed other people. And I think Levi was kind of a cathartic character in that way.
Yeah. So at this time, I would love to invite you to do a reading for us. And so if I will give you the stage. The author's stage is yours.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
This is from the first chapter. I did something I don't usually do. I put some different points of view, so I will say the name, and this is how it's written, the name and the time, because events are kind of escalating toward a certain climax. Kristen, 1:00 p.m. They clap for the old balding guy, even though they have no idea who he is. Kristen sees him emerge from his box, which is next to the one they rented. She wonders why all the rich guys are ugly, and if there's any way to know a man will end up looking like that before it's too late. Tina has no class. She brings her bottle of Seagram's wine cooler with her and is already half shitty. She leans on the fence, practically dangling the bottle on the track. Kristen watches as the man steps forward to make what she was sure would be a lame-ass speech, when something catches her eye. A bird lands in the middle of the track, not far from that guy, Von, whatever his name is. Her eyes adjust. Not a bird. The thought echoes in her head. It reverberates through the blast. It lingers in the darkness, fading only to another thought. This is my party, and I waited a year. She's lost somewhere in the dark before this notion and the angst that would follow has any time to take hold. Words float in and out of the darkness. Candelabra, turn on the lights before you leave. Somebody turn on the candle. Barbara, you could have been early. She doesn't feel her body hit the ground feet from where she stood. She doesn't see the blood run down her dress. I made my mom buy me a new one, and soak into the ground at the Saratoga racetrack. Nicholas, 1:05 p.m. Nicholas feels the explosion before his mind registers it. He coughs. Through his binoculars, all he can see is smoke. He pulls them down, witnessing the gray plume rising in the air. Cheers subside to murmurs of confusion and then screams of terror. Shrieking from the boy next to him pierces deep into his ears. "It's part of the show, honey," the kid's mother lies. Naira police rush across the track on their golf carts and on foot. He lifts his binoculars to his eyes in time to see the horse rear up at the noise and nearly trample her handler as she bolts around the track. Nicholas grunts a sound of disapproval. The horse, candle, whatever the fuck, will be lucky if she doesn't get shot. She's out of control. The horse stumbles to the ground, proud silky brown mane now caked in dirt and dust. A van drives toward the horse. Medics rush to the area where Bonvenuto was just speaking. "Not every day a man gets vanned off," Nicholas comments. In their panic, no one hears him. Let me skip over to this part here. Mandy, 1:02 p.m. For a moment, her heart stands still. She doesn't understand what just happened. Her two best friends, smiling, joking, posing for pictures one moment, and the next, on the ground, feet from each other, one unconscious, dead? She doesn't want to consider the possibility, but Kristen may actually be dead. The others had run from the track after the explosion, but Mandy froze. She feels a tug on her arm, her ears ringing. She can't hear anything. She turns her head, moving in the slow stupor of disbelief. Tish is there. She's mouthing something. Her eyes are wide, brows arched like a bad wax job. The piercing tone in her ear is getting louder, distracting her. She can't make out what her friend is saying. Someone in uniform runs toward Tina, now sitting upright, and Kristen on the ground, bleeding. This isn't supposed to happen. And I'll stop there.
And thank you. Then that is what really sets things into into some wild motion. So Angela, thank you very much for being here today. Thank you for talking with me and sharing your insights and your book with us. So for proper promotion, where can people find you, whether it's in real life or online, and most importantly, where can people find your work?
Oh, thank you. My website is angelakaufmanauthor.com. I don't update it regularly because that's not my favorite thing, but it's there. And the books can be found at Amazon, Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com. I always encourage people to use IndieBound to support independent bookstores too. You can find it online there as well. Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, you're welcome. I'm going to say thank you again. The politeness for us. Well, the time has come for us to take our bows and leave the author's stage. Many thanks again to Universal Preservation Hall and Proctors Collaborative and the Saratoga Springs Public Library for their partnership on this program. And most of all, a big thank you to our guest, Angela Kaufman, for joining us here on the stage. I'm Trevor Oakley, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Be sure to read something good today.